Hi everyone. I wanted to talk to you quickly about the fourth report. So it's finally out and you got everything you need on Moodle, but since we're not doing courses anymore, I don't get to actually get to tell you about it and using my voice. And so I wanted to do this in this video. I will reiterate right from the start that you're welcome to contact me during exam season. While you're doing this report, you're welcome to ask for a meeting. Just because our course is over doesn't mean I can't meet you. I am absolutely available. If anything, I'm even more available now to meet you and to help with any questions regarding this report, okay? So please don't hesitate to do that if this video is not enough as an introduction. But basically, so I just wanted to run over what I've done with you, just to make sure everything's clear in your minds. So I created a database here with different variables, right? And you can see it goes all the way to here. All right. So there's a database here with different variables, and you have access to this database. And what I'm basically asking you to do is run a series of checks in terms of data cleaning and data checking and so on. And I'm asking you to basically run through each of the types of checks that were highlighted in the different YouTube videos that I posted on the Moodle, right? And so let me show you specifically what I mean here. So I have the instruction file here. Starts with the description of the variables. So it tells you what every variable is. So it's important that you read what every variable is and for you to understand what kind of variable it is. Is it a quantitative variable, a qualitative variable? Is it what kind of measure is it, and so on, so that you can make decisions later on when you're cleaning the data set in some cases. But here are the descriptions of the variables, okay? Please note that this mentions also whether some items are reverse scales or not, because later on you might need to unreverse them, right? And so after the, well, actually, let's go through it, because I would have gone through it anyways during the course. So your first variable, the ID variable, here, I don't need this thing here. This is always annoying. Enregistrer le contenu, no. All right, so the first variable here, the ID variable, right here, is basically an identification for each participant in the database. Okay, so I assign a number to each participant. All right, so each participant should have their own unique number. The consent variables identifies whether yes or no each participant agreed to participate in this study. So as you can see, at least from participant 1 to 26, it goes on, but at least 1 to 26, you can say everybody consented here. The time variable. The time variable indicates the number of minutes each participant took to complete the questionnaire. Right? So you can see the first participants took 34 minutes and 11 seconds, 23 minutes and 58 seconds for the second one, and so on. Oh yeah, it's not seconds, because if it was seconds, it couldn't be 23 minutes and 74 seconds, because that would be like 24 minutes and 14 seconds. But let's imagine it is, okay? So let's imagine... let's imagine there are 100 minutes per second, 100 seconds per minute, okay? Sorry about that, but anyways, let's imagine that. The pet variable, basically we ask participants to indicate which pet, either from dog or cat, participants prefer. So let's imagine that they're able to answer that question, that there's no I don't like pets, or I don't like cats or dogs, or I prefer fish, or whatever, or emus or llamas or whatever. Let's imagine that everybody could answer either dog or cat, and that's what we have here. The gender variable indicates the gender of the participants. Okay, and I've got a really basic plot thing going on here, which is masculine, feminine, and other, right? The lang variable is language, and so that's the gender one here. The lang is language, so either English or French. French is franc and English is eng, right? The age variables indicates the age of the participants, right? So here it is. The sleep variable indicates the number of hours each participant sleeps per night. So let's imagine we ask participants to report on average how many hours they sleep a night, you know, their best night, let's say, or their most representative night. And we can see the first person said 8, second person said 8, third person said 6 hours, and so on. That's the sleep variable. The friends variable indicates the number of close friends reported by each participant. So let's imagine we ask, you know, how many close friends do you have? And let's say first participant said 1, the other said 3, the next one said 2, and so on. All right. Next, we have a series of measures that are a series of items that basically feed into a broad self-esteem measure. So we ran a measure of, let's imagine we ran a measure of self-esteem with participants, and this measure has 6 items. So esteem 1 to esteem 6, and here they are, right? Esteem 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So these are the 6 items of the self-esteem measure. And please remember, it uses a scale of 1 to 7, right? And please remember that item 1, 3, and 6 are reverse scores. So this one, and this one, the scores are those are reversed items. So you might need to unreverse them in future calculations. So bear in mind. Next, we have a measure of agreeableness, which has 9 items that go from agree 1 to agree 9. And here they are, right? From agree 1 all the way to agree 9, right? And this uses a scale of 1 to 10. And the items 4 and 7 are reversed. So these are actually reversed items, and so please keep in mind that when you do future calculations on this, you will have to unreverse these. Next, we have a measure of gratitude that was administered to participant. It has 5 items, grat 1 to grat 5, and here are the items. And these are a 0 to 7 scale, and items 1 and 4 are reverse items in the measure, and so please keep in mind you may have to unreverse those for future calculations. Okay, so that's the database. And basically what I'm asking you to do in this report is to address the following questions and items in order. So you have to do this in order, otherwise stuff is not going to make sense. You have to do this in sequence, right? So first, are the variables in the database appropriately categorized? You know, in terms of what type of variable it is and what unit of measure it is. If not, what problems did you find? You can tell what categories each variable is from the description. You know, are there any problems in the way it's entered in the database? Please check out the YouTube for that. Actually, check out all YouTubes for all of these questions, because all these questions are based on what I showed to you on the YouTubes, on the YouTube videos that I made. So are the variables in the database appropriately categorized? If not, what problems did you find? For each problem, please indicate which changes should be made and make the necessary changes directly in the database. So look, the report, I'm expecting a written portion, and I'm expecting to get back a cleaned up database. That's what I want from you. I want a written part on Word, and I want a cleaned up, updated database. You know, an SPSS database, right? So I don't want to impose any format in terms of the writing. Obviously, you should have a title page, obviously. But then I'm leaving it up to you, really. You could go question by question, and that would be fine. You can make up sections, whatever you want. I don't really want to impose anything. But the idea is, I want you to write down everything you did everything you found, everything you thought, every solution you came up with, and everything you implemented, write that down, and then actually implement it in the database, right? So here in the first one, I would actually want you to, write down which variables were not appropriately categorized, if any. What exactly, how exactly were they miscategorized? What were the problems? What were the issues? How they should have been categorized, and then actually go ahead and change that in the database and say, I have changed that in the database. Second, the variable consent is not relevant for this report because people who did not consent to the study did not answer the other questions. Duh, if you said no to consent, you shouldn't go on and answer the other questions. So it turns out everybody's yes, so I'm asking you to please delete it from the database. So here, you don't actually have to write down anything. Well, you could just write down, the consent variable has been deleted from the database. There's nothing more you need to write down. Third, this report is only interested in individuals who completed the study in 30 minutes or less. Remembering that we're imagining that there are 100 seconds per minute, okay? So if you see 29 minutes and 99 seconds, although that means over 30 minutes, it doesn't for us, okay? It doesn't for us. So this report is only interested in individuals who completed the study in 30 minutes or less. What are the IDs of participants who took more than 30 minutes? So I'm asking you to basically, so you're going to want to write down in the report what are the IDs of the participants who took more than 30 minutes. And I'm asking you then to please remove all these participants from the database. So that's something you would do directly in the database. And next, please delete the minutes variable after that. And so I'm asking you to do that directly in the database. So other than identifying the participants who took more than 30 minutes and then delete and then writing these participants have been deleted from the database and the variable minutes has also been deleted, there's nothing else I guess you would need to write. The rest is just implementing the stuff in SPSS. Fourth, are there duplicate cases in the databases? If so, what are the IDs of the duplicate cases? So you're going to want to write those down. Please delete it from the database. You want to write down they have been deleted, and then you actually want to go in the database and actually delete them. 5, are there structural problems in the data for the pet, language, and gender variables? Remember, structural problems are anything to do with the way the answers have been entered, in terms of language, in terms of capitalization, in terms of errors or punctuations or something like that. Are there any structural problems in the data for the pet, language, and gender variables? If so, what are these problems? So I want you to write down very specifically which problems you found, going through all the cases, all the different types of problems you found. And for each problem, please indicate which changes should be made. So I want you to write down which changes should be made. And then go ahead and actually make the necessary changes directly in the database. And you could just write down changes have been made to the database in your report after having listed what problems were and which changes should be made. 6, please recode the response of the gender variable using numbers. So we currently have masc and femme or something like that. But please recode this in terms of numbers. So in the report, you just need to say, the gender variable has been recoded in terms of the 0s and 1s, or 0, 1s and 2s, or 1, 2s and 3s, or whatever. Okay. Then do the same thing for the language variable. So again, you would go directly in the database, change it, and actually write in the report, it's been recoded. Okay. 8, do any variables have missing data? If so, please replace the missing data with the average of the variable. So I should have written down here, I guess, please list what are the IDs. I want you to list the IDs that had missing data. Actually, let me be more specific here. What would be the best here is if you listed all the variables that had missing data and listed how many data points were missing for each variable. So I would expect you to write down, gender had X missing points, pets had X missing points, friends had X missing points. Okay, that would actually be best. And then go around. So you don't need the actual IDs of the participants, just how many missing points there were, how many missing data there were for each variable for which there was missing data. And the YouTube video on that will show you specifically how to have access to this, how to run this little analysis. And then go ahead and replace the missing data with the average of the variable in question. And you could say in the report, the average of the variable in question is whatever it is, and the missing data was replaced with this value. Okay. Are there any outliers? That's number 9. Any outliers in the sleep variable? If so, what are the IDs of these? Which participants, basically? What are the IDs of the participants who were outliers in the sleep variable? Are there any outliers in the friends variable? If so, what are the IDs? So you want to write that down. And those are basically univariate outliers, but then the YouTube makes a difference between univariate outliers, where you would use box and whisker plots and z-scores, and multivariate outliers, where here you're using your Mahalanobis distance. Are there any multivariate outliers in the hours friends variable combination? And if so, what are the IDs? So basically, for question 9, 10, and 11, I want you to tell me, what did you use to determine if there were outliers? I want you to write it down. What did you use specifically? How did you determine if there were outliers? In question 9 and 10, and also in question 11. Now, obviously, I already gave you that information on the YouTube of what you can use, but you would report it here. So I used box and whiskers and z-scores, and I determined that if a z-score was over so much, it was it was an outlier, or I determined that if the box and whisker plot shows a little asterisks, it was an outlier, or something like that. That's why I'm kind of keeping it open. What I really want you is to clean up the database and report to the maximum detail what you did. Question 12. Please compute the esteem total for a score for each participant. So remember how esteem has basically 6 items? It's a 6-item measure. And remember how some of those are reverse scored, right? And so please compute total, a new variable which you would call esteem total, or total esteem, or something like that, right? For each participant. And so here you could just write down, esteem total has been computed for each participant. And I would go in your database and see how you've done it. Please compute the same thing for the agreeableness variable items. Noting again that for the agreeableness, it is the items 4 and 7 that are reversed, whereas for esteem it was 1, 3, and 6. And then do the same thing for gratitude, noting that 1 and 4 are reversed. Okay. Note also, when you're unreversing these scores, that some items are from 1 to 7, some are from 1 to 10, and some are from 0 to 7. So keep that in mind. Next, are there any outliers in that total esteem, in those total esteem scores that you just calculated? If so, which ones? So please ID them in your report, and explain how you determined that it was an outlier. Are there any outliers in the total agreeableness score? Do the same thing. If so, which ones? Are there any outliers in the total gratitude scores? If so, which ones? And then, are there any multivariate outlier cases in the esteem, agree, gratitude kind of combination? How did you go about determining that? And if there are, which ones? Right? And so this is the report. Out of 80 points, attributed to all of these points, gives a total of 80, basically. So really, I am leaving the format open. What I want to get from you, again, is a database, a cleaned up database. So I'm going to be checking the database to see if you missed anything, to see if you correctly cut the cases I asked you to cut, to see if you correctly corrected some of the errors, to see if you correctly identified some of the stuff that I asked you to identify, to see if you correctly computed variables I wanted you to compute, to see if you correctly recoded variables I wanted you to recode. I'm going to be checking all of that. And then I'm going to be checking your Word document to basically get a sense of everything you did, but in written format, right? And so that's the report. So don't stress too much about the format of it. Basically run through everything here in sequence. It's very important that you run through this in sequence. Otherwise, some stuff won't make sense for other stuff. If you, let's say you started with 0.2 and then you moved on to 0.7, that wouldn't work. You need to go from 1 all the way to 18 in a linear time, in sequence, basically. And if you have any questions, really any at all, please don't hesitate to contact me, and we can Zoom, we can share screen, I can help you. And I will put the deadline on I'll send you the deadline via an email. Again, because I'm not sure exactly what we had said about that, but I'm really open to extending this, a lot of time that you need. So that is the report. Let me know if there are any questions, and see you later.